to wrap up talking a bit about impact on specialty teams. And the 3 points that I'm going to make here today is that number one, HISP will no longer be a program. Okay? Remember when I talked to you about programs before, I said that programs typically mean that individuals in a program all have the same reporting conditions, same requirements. What we know about our people is that they don't all need the same thing, and so we should not treat them all the same way. So HISP will no longer be a program. What we will have is electronic monitoring as a condition that will be supervised. When people hear that conversation, the very first question that typically comes up is what will happen to the HISP teams of today? The best way I can explain it is that they will more likely than not continue to exist. It is just that the individuals who supervise people on electronic monitoring will only supervise the individual conditions that each defendant has assigned. So in other words, right now, there are uniform drug testing requirements for individuals in our HISP program. There are common reporting conditions for individuals in our HISP program. Individuals on electronic monitoring may have different reporting schedules. They may or may not have a drug testing condition. And while they will all be supervised on one team, you will simply supervise the conditions, which means you may get someone with an electronic monitoring requirement who doesn't also have a drug testing condition. But you would be responsible for supervising the EM condition along with any other reporting conditions that have been ordered. And again, same deal, you would modulate up or down based on the intensity. A couple of other questions that we got regarding HISP was whether or not officers would have the independent ability to take someone off of electronic monitoring. The answer to that is no, because electronic monitoring is something that is imposed by the court. We would still have to go back to the court to ask for removal of the devices. Okay, so while we may be getting a lot of latitude in what we can do, there is a legal authority that would be required to remove a device from someone. However, if you are supervising someone who is highly compliant, is not very high risk, and you feel as though they could benefit from an opportunity to be off of GPS, we would certainly encourage you to write the report to the court asking for removal from EM supervision and placement into a regular supervision condition. Okay. Next, our drug court program is not going to be immediately impacted by any of these changes. Okay, a lot of questions about how would this impact drug court and what does this mean for people in drug court? Drug court actually is a bit ahead of the curve. Back in 2012, the court did an independent evaluation of drug court, and in response to that evaluation, we already created what is called a contingency management system for drug court. If you've ever looked at drug court's protocols, it already gives officers options for responding to conduct, options for how you will incentivize or penalize compliant or non-compliant behavior. So drug court is already ahead of the curve with their existing contingency management program. And for that reason, at this point in time, we're not going to be making any immediate changes to drug court because in some ways drug court is already there. Okay? And then third, the other most common question that we get is about SSU. I'm sorry, let me double back and get one more question in that we were asked about drug court. One of the questions that we got about drug court is whether our treatment budget will go up or down in response to this. The answer right now is we don't know. What our goal will be would be to reserve our treatment dollars for those individuals who pose the greatest risk to public safety. That is not the way that we operate today. That essentially today, if you have a treatment need that's high enough, we put you in treatment and we pay for it, irrespective of the risk that you pose to public safety. Going forward, there will likely be cases where individuals who pose a lower risk to public safety, although they may be substance users or substance dependent, we will be sending them out for community-based referrals instead of paying for the treatment. So I don't know whether or not that will mean any change to our treatment budget, but I appreciate the question, and those of you who have that question know that that is something that we will continue to monitor, and we will determine any adjustments that need to be made based on that. And then last, let me jump into SSU. SSU at this time is not going to be affected. we are going to let this module run in what we call today GSU, what we call today our other generalized programs. We will then need to do a reevaluation to determine how to overlay a substantial compliance model in this new environment. Okay, so today, much of what happens in SSU will continue to operate that way until we have enough data to figure out how to structure a substantial compliance model. We will be doing that in the near future, but just not as an initial starting point. When we did our risk assessment revalidation, we do know that our SSU population poses different challenges, and in some respects, they pose slightly higher risks to public safety. But what we did not want to do is to overcorrect by doing too much with the population that resulted in their inability to comply and really kind of tanked their success rates. And so we are letting the initial phases of APG and RBS play themselves out, and at an appropriate point in time, more likely than not, starting in fiscal year 2021, we will take a look at what needs to be adjusted with respect to our SSU population. So let's talk about next steps. That's really the ground that we wanted to cover today. So in terms of next steps, we're going to continue exposure to this deeper dive through training. I believe that the conversation that we're having today is going to be, the video of today's conversation is going to be used for facilitated discussions going forward. We already have given notice to our bargaining unit that we're going to be forming work groups to react to much of what I talked about today. So we will have work groups that will be facilitated by operations leadership to look at the risk-based recommendations matrix, and then also the new protocols for responding to defendant conduct, and also those additional pieces that I talked about, the orientation and the goal-directed supervision. Because we did get a question, are we going to have a chance to weigh in on this? Absolutely. So we're going to be able to do a deeper dive and get reaction from the individuals who do this work day in and day out. So we'll be doing those work groups. I believe in the next 30 to 60 days, we will initiate those. And then the last piece is we're going to continue discussions during team meetings, just about everything that is happening with respect to APG. Those individuals who have already been selected to be a part of the CMS work groups, those talking sessions with our contractors. What I'm asking is those of you who are supervisors in this room, as you have your team meetings, give people an opportunity to share with their colleagues the experience that they're having in those groups. Give people an opportunity to say, hey, this is what we talked about last week. This is what I said. Would you guys have had me tell them anything else? Should I have said something different? Because if that opportunity is present, they may be able to go back the next week and share some of the thoughts and perspectives of their colleagues. Because while we can't get everyone to the table, our goal is to at least get everyone's input reflected and accounted for at the table. And the only way we can do this is by the management team creating opportunities for that input to be exchanged and then ultimately given back to the decision makers and those people who are actually building the system. In addition, over the next, hopefully over the next 60 days, we will be opening up observation slots in our APG, our weekly APG task force meeting. We will have one seat available each week for a management team member, one seat available for a bargaining unit member, and that is simply for people who are interested in pulling back the curtain a little bit and having a bird's eye view into what those conversations look like. There is no goal there is no requirement for participation. It is simply an effort to increase transparency and make sure people understand the seriousness with which we are approaching this effort and the level of transparency and inclusion that we're hoping to have as we march forward. So that's it for now, folks. I want to just echo and say thank you again to the APG task force that meets weekly and is the author of much of what I was able to talk about today. I'm really looking forward to the focus groups where we can kind of get input and reaction to the matrix and to the protocols. And I'll just end by saying that I'm really excited to be on this journey with all of you, and I'm really excited for where we're headed. And I'll thank you in advance for the work that is going to continue to go into really revolutionizing the way we do work here and continuing to make us the premier pretrial services organization in the nation. So thank you for your time and attention today.